Go. Well, howdy. Just saying, season 3, episode 14. Welcome to it. You'll see Bromeo's looking young and sexy over here. Replaced this week by we got Pyro J and we got Borky in. So I got Yanks on either side of me. So I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but they are both well spoken and not your classic bombastic Americans. If that's a fair assessment, Pyro.
Hey, I have a new Hinge profile bio now. Sexy and well spoken. That's what I'm putting right down there. Fortunately for Bromeo, they don't show height on the broadcast, so he would be towering over me IRL. But today, that's me. A visual upgrade for sure. Happy to be here. And Borky, it's our first time talking, so happy to shoot around some thoughts around with you today.
Oh, absolutely. Normally, I'm just the super sub when both you and Bromeo aren't here, but it's a pleasure to be joining with you. And I promise I still will make some atrocious takes like Bromeo does.
Perfect.
Excellent. And Pyro will be over all of those. So hello to chat. And so far in chat, it was Raids who was first in chat, and he was just in our Discord, sort of hanging with us before we went live. And then Borky and Pyro. But I see Devour and now Tanya have slid into chat. So hello and welcome to you guys. Now Raids is leaving. Oh no! Oh, I've got to turn myself up a bit. Oh, okay. Well, that's gonna be a challenge. I'm just gonna talk louder. All right, gents. Well, the main thing we've got to talk about is open number 4, because that's what's just happened. And well, let's start before we go and look at brackets and break down teams. What's the sort of too long didn't read emotional feeling? What did you come away from open number 4 with? So no big details, sort of like the high level of how you felt with it. Let's start with you, Pyro.
I have kind of a cool takeaway, which is that moving down to the region does help. And that comes in many forms, but for things to be elaborated further, I'll come back to that point. I think a big takeaway that is an obvious one is that 5 years isn't just the team representing the region at the Boston Major, but they look very well in favor to be the Paris Major representatives as well. That wasn't just a win. That was a clobbering that we saw, and that we casted Greybeards in the grand finals.
Yeah, Borky. So Pyro and I were very close up to the action, sort of being on the broadcast, and sometimes it can make you a little. It's hard to see big picture stuff. You didn't even watch a lot of it live with other commitments going on. You had to sort of catch up through the VODs, and I'm sure when you went and had a look at Liquipedia, your first thought was, "What the?" So your overall thoughts on the Open.
Yeah, I will admit I spent a lot of this weekend holding my phone up into the air trying to get service to load the broadcast as many times I could, but I mean, looking into watching the VODs and then watching Liquipedia, it's two completely different tales there. So you really had to experience it firsthand to be able to get the full picture. But I will say, probably my biggest takeaways from everything I saw is Guns is playing on a completely different level right now than the rest of SSA.
I think that's a good, well, we're going to delve deeper in that because you're absolutely not wrong there. So my high level takeaway was I was initially incredibly excited going into GSL, seeing Midwest Mafia, seeing Marine Region, Astronic, Synthesis. There was so much promise coming out of GSL. And then Saturday was Yeah, okay. This is interesting. Sunday, I don't know. It almost felt like, other than our opening series, and my goodness, we're absolutely going to talk about that.
Mm.
It felt anticlimactic. Other than, oh my God, Five Fears are so good, and that's on the one hand very positive. On the other, it's giving me season one vibes of, one great team and everybody else scrapping. I don't think we're certainly not there, but there were certainly harmonics and ghosts of that. So with that said, I think we may as well get into the breakdown of that now. I just had an audio notification, and I'm going to be completely honest, I have no idea what it was for, but I think it might have been, raided, holy moly, a raid from Finn Carey. Thank you very much. Welcome to the Just Saying podcast, everything SSA Rocket League, so welcome to it. So, gents, on the screen now is GSL stage, Group A. Let's have a roundup of that. Your highlights, lowlights, surprises. What were you happy with? Anything you took out of GSL from what you see there in the bracket?
I'll start here because we talked about this group last podcast, and I had to make my very succinct predictions who was making it through. And I was right. I did say both Crocros and Astronic would go through. I said that was going to be the sauciest match of GSL. What I absolutely did not predict was Astronic beating Pioneers. Never in my life would I have imagined that. The Game 5 victory. Little did we know that was foreshadowing for later in the tournament, but the kudos are required for a team that has been working between Skillsteal and Devour so well, but then an Inspire who moved down to South Africa to be on the same ping. And we see how that has given this team some serious confidence to move forward in that way.
Yeah, and your takes there, Borky?
Well, I think Pyro already hit the first elephant in the room with Astronic and Pioneers, but I want to point out here another crash out for LFO. And I mean, that was a team that we looked at Open 1 as a potential front runner for one of the top 4 within the region. I know they had that roster change, bringing in Zany, I believe. But I feel like for me, I was expecting a little bit more from LFO other than just the 2 games and see you next weekend.
Well, at this point, I've got to give a quick shout out to the Rounds people. 2 raids from the, it looks like the Rounds community. Shout out to you, Finn Carey, for the raid, and then a raid from Baby Cute and Renshiro's. Yeah, how's it? So the highlight there, absolutely Astronic, with Inspire coming out here live from Bloemfontein, having such an impact. That whole squad just looked so good through GSL, and we'll get into their main, their top 8 performance. But let's talk about LFO. Where to from here for LFO? I have such a frustration with Zany, because Zany, Zany, I came across probably 3 years ago now, when he was sort of before we had all met Devour and Ravi. He was kind of like the first of this new young talent coming through, and he's not quite. He's made a few top 16s. I think he's made 1 or 2 top 8s. But struggle. And then Werty, up until the middle, up until Open number 2, had almost never missed out on a championship Saturday. They've now missed their 3rd in a row. And Eli leaving then, we'll talk about Marine Region, because he did far better. But gentlemen, I don't even know which one of the 2 of you to ask. Where to from here for LFO? Werty, Torres, who tore through SSA with Foot Esports last season, playing from Spain, obviously, but I don't know.
I'll jump in here for a second. I have like a weird theory, and it is that vibes matter so much. So Eli goes from a team where, maybe he did fit in well within the culture, maybe he didn't, to a team where he gets to play with his brother. Like, could you ask for any better vibes than that? I grew up with 3 brothers, so I know what that relationship is like very, very well, both being an older brother and a younger brother. And you're going to clash, but that's actually a good thing. It means you can call somebody out on the stuff they're doing wrong so you can fix it going in. Like, you can call them out on anything. And so I actually love the brother dynamic. I think it plays part of it to make Rawaz and Killers so well playing together. But I'll also say that the other thing that bolsters this vibe theory is that Wordy started the season kind of mocking teams that were taking on the whole 2/3 role. Like, oh, wow, everybody's taking in an import player. We're not. We're going all SSA players. And then that team broke apart, and then they had to pull in Torres. So, like, I don't really think that was the vibe that Wordy was going for off the bat. Yes, on paper, they're a great team, but I don't know, maybe the culture wasn't perfect. I can only make kind of these, assumptions, right? But that's my working theory, is that vibes matter. And that shows with LFO, and I'm sure with the Team Marine region that we'll talk about later.
I have a concern with Werty because, he's always been so passionate about Rocket League and so keen to compete. But I worry that these set of results bring him to a point of like, okay, maybe it's time, because I think he's 23-ish, there or thereabouts, and I don't know if he's now flirting with retirement ideas, moving into the coaching. I don't know. I've not spoken with him, and I certainly don't want to put anything out there. But it's got to be very tough for him to see what's going on there, and yeah, I don't. The hope from here, and I think they will, just because there's not a large number of available resources going into Opens 5 and 6 to bring someone else in, and I think they do need to give it a fair shake for the rest of the season and stick with Zany. But Zany's that one player that's never hit the heights that I thought he would, because at one stage he was putting in so many hours, and I don't know, just hasn't quite made it through yet. But the result is that they were swept by the Pioneers, and that's fair enough. Most teams would be, unless you're Astronic. But the sweep from Brocrocros, that's got to have hurt a little bit. I mean, Borky, you would expect that to go to a game 5 at least.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly what I was saying. It felt like they kind of showed up, played the bare minimum of the games that they had to, and then that was about it. I mean, obviously, yes, you can always make the argument, Pioneers, that's a tough matchup, Crocros and Lowers, that's another one, but you shouldn't have been in that situation in the first place, coming out 3-2 in Swiss for a team that we've held to high regard throughout the season. And I mean, a third crash out in a row, in my opinion, I think I might have to go back and side with Pyro there, where, I mean, Rocket League at the end of the day is a team game, and if you're not establishing that chemistry, and I mean, obviously the introduction of Zany, you still have to work out and iron out some of those wrinkles, but I was expecting at least a more closer performance against Brocrocos. I think every single game Brocrocos was just like a 4-1, 4-2.
And then, interestingly, I mean, given the results as they stand now, it's unlikely for the team name to change by the end of the season.
Yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah. Although I will give a little bit of inside skinny, is that they were close. They almost competed under Death Cloud. And then there was a little bit of hemming and hawing, and then Cam's team went with Death Cloud, and then LFO was like, hey, yeah, that'll be cool. It was like, yeah, you were a bit late on that. So that could have been, but as things turned out, a good call for Death Cloud, which we'll come to in a moment. The other team I want to mention is Midwest Mafia. That's Peanuts, Jerome, and someone needs to help me out here.
Warhide.
Oh, Varate. I keep forgetting Varate. And he's such a highlight for me, and I keep forgetting him. Yeah, of course, VAR8. And so, and in a way, they did exactly what I thought they would, because they came in, they made their way through Swiss, had some really good, tough games, challenged some big teams. And on last week's podcast, we were all saying we just don't know, because they don't have, there's no long track record to base anything off, but they had very close games with big teams. And but then they pretty much did what you'd kind of expect from a team like that in GSL. Is they swept Punishers, who were playing with a sub, it has to be said. Marmone wasn't there. Chase was playing in his place. Swept them, but then got swept by Synthesis and then swept by the Bro Crocros. So they were kind of in and out there. But I do want to mention that because Jerome does feature on the top 10 performers for this Open. Which we'll come to when we get to the stats section. But there we go. Those were the big movements. Hello, Portia. Those were the big movements in Group A. In Group B, frustrating that Fusion DQ. They didn't play because one of their roster, Wrath, and this is the second time this season we've had a team competing who made it further than they thought they would and were otherwise committed. So Wrath had something else to do, so he's like, "Oh, sorry." And they did have a sub, but they thought they were going to lose, so why bother? So they just DQ'd, which is frustrating because that would have seen Zan playing. And someone's going to have to remind me there. Who was it was Zan, Raf, and?
Lixa.
Who?
Lixa.
Oh, of course, Lixa. Lixa, he was like, well, I'm not going to play the sub. I'm going to go to work. Anyway, they DQ'd out, so they weren't there. And then Strive, who took 5 fears to 5 games earlier. And was that in Swiss, or when was that? When did they have? Because they were Strive before, but
it was in Swiss. Yes.
Oh, it was in Swiss. Okay, so it took 5 fears to 5 games. So I had high hopes for this. They did what they had to do against White Rabbit, then got absolutely obliterated by Death Cloud. But they did make it into the lower bracket for Saturday, into top 8, which was a good move. And then, yeah, any other highlights or lowlights there?
I think for me, my biggest highlight is Rounds finally making it into a top 8. And I know that I'm here for filling in for Bromeo, so there's been a little bit of beef between the Rounds production team of Rhino and Sir Pegasus and Haza against Bromeo, saying that Rounds won't make a top 8. Well, they finally have shaken those ghosts. They made a nice little lower round run. I mean, it was a very close game against Marine Region 2. That one could have gone anyway. That was a coin toss, and then, of course, going to the bottom. So I just wanted to, harp on a little bit of Pyro's earlier summary of being in region is a huge buff, because Renshiro has now officially landed in South Africa.
Yeah, that was and Pyro. I mean, you made the point about Renshiro and Inspire and the difference they have made. I was especially delighted for his teammates. A non-South African team, 2 reunion players, and Renshiro. They and the team we were talking about, Strive Now Rising Esports, another all reunion team, who were swept by Rounds. That was a surprise. You take 5 fears to 5 games, and then Rounds sweeps you. As good as Renshiro is from Cape Town.
Yeah, it's like, I'm still wrapping my head around the story of Wordy and Wilu, how they've had seasons of being at the top of the competition to being where they are now and just struggling to make top 8, even after the 2/3 roll. That was not what I was expecting whatsoever, especially after Strive getting picked up by Rising, and thinking more about how Eagle has gotten their chance in the top 8 already. Hallows looking like a great addition. The team's finally starting to come together. They go to game 5 with 5 fears. Like, everything was lining up, but Rounds just said, nah, we're different. Which, again, I agree with Borky. Like, good for them. We've been waiting to see that too. The other thing that comes into the fold of the conversation with being in South African playing is going to be Lewis P. I'm really curious as to people's thoughts on like whether that's part of what's happening to the Pioneers right now, because you take, split number 1 where he was there. Pioneers make a really good match out of every single encounter with 5 fears. And now open number 4 where that was not the case. But we can have that conversation when we get to playoffs.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a conversation we're going to have tonight. It's a conversation we're going to have on the broadcast. It's one of those headline conversations for the rest of the season because, well, Pioneers have one more crack at this. Otherwise, their season is done and cooked. But we will talk about that. What I do want to mention, GSL, coming out of GSL, and probably the thing I am most frustrated about, other than what happened in the grand final, is the former Death Cloud roster, T-Shao, Twinzer, and Tweaks, made top 8, Open 1, Open 2, Open 3, and yes, they had to scrap for it. They went to round 5 of Swiss. They went to game 5s. They had to reverse sweep, but they made every single top 8. And then they decided, well, that wasn't good enough for the 3 of them. They went their own way, and now none of them, not one of those 3 people, were in a top 8.
Yeah, speaking, were any of them in the top 16?
Because
I know if we both Twinzer and Tweaks were on Team E1. They finished 2 and 3 in Swiss, and then I'm not sure where.
T-Shao, no, none of them were in top 16. You're quite right. So they didn't never mind top 8. They didn't even get halfway there to top 16. But
it was a bad break for E1 too, because they ended up losing to LFO in that final. Wait, was it? Yeah, LFO in that final match. Which why is LFO in round 5, Borky, like you mentioned? Because I looked at that E1 roster, I'm like, dang, I'm upset Triple T are broken up, but they look good. They look good. I'm excited to see where they go. No, top 16, ridiculous.
Anyway, so and you were saying, Pyro, that vibes matter, and they certainly do. And you're making 3 top 8s in a row. How bad were those vibes that they're like, you know what? Yeah, that's not good enough for us. We're going to go anyway. It is what it is, and they.
I will make one remark on this because this is a case study that's been looked at very closely in NA. A team that performed really well but made a change was Foot. They were getting some top 6 finishes and still made like a roster change to cut back on their points. And it seems to have worked out so far for them. So it's the fact that the season is so condensed. I've said this every single season since we cut back on 3 splits. It hurts the esports so much because you really don't give a chance for teams to dig in, make changes early, and still have a long-term team by the end of it. You get a lot of teams are feeling very forced to make some kind of adjustment that will put them on top for the next split because that's all there is left.
On that point, Pyro, and you have made that point a lot, and it is a very, very sound point. And given everything that's going on with Rocket League and in the esport, I do feel like we're moving in a very positive direction. The optimist in me is I don't know. I'm feeling some optimism in that regard for next season, but it might be misplaced. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. So that was GSL, and that moves us on to then Saturday, the top 8. And the top 8 were Synthesis, 5 Fears, Death Cloud Esports, Astronic Esports, Pioneers, Rounds, Brocrocros, Marine Region. And on Saturday, we tend on the broadcast to get one banger series and then sweeps the rest of the way. We weren't too far off here. Pioneers, although Rounds, shout out to Rounds, taking a game off, it has to be said, a little bit of a wounded Pioneers, but nonetheless, they got a game there. But for the rest, well, Brocroco swept Marine Region, 5 Fears swept Synthesis, and of course, the big highlight match, and maybe we start there, but how entertaining was, the real entertainment was the next day, but Astronic falling to Death Cloud, and based on the performance of former Amapiano, now with Kaka instead of Keksi, they, in my mind, I go, have they overtaken Bro Crocros for that third place spot, or is it too early to tell? Pyro.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a big question mark on number 3 right now, and it is between Deathcloud, Astronic, and Bro Crocos. Apology synthesis. I need to see some good results against some higher level teams. You guys did crush your way through Swiss and GSL, but questionable who you crushed through. It's alarming the way that Astronic and Deathcloud are playing right now. I mean, for Amapiano to make that change to Karka and still play as well as they are, for Astronic to beat Bro Crocos not once but twice, like, I think the story is over for calling Bro Crocos a firm third place after this open.
Well, maybe Deathcloud need to pony up and fly Karka out here. Because that could make things really, really interesting. My opinion on Astronic is and they were magnificent, but I feel like they are the third place conversation is definitely Deathcloud and Bro Crocros. Astronic need a couple more results.
I mean, you don't want to put Astronic in that conversation.
I want to put them in the orbit of the conversation. But for me
even
now,
after they beat Bro Crocos twice,
that's
fair. That's fine.
I think they've got to do it again. You know, Bro Crocos have had consistency, and we know Jeff had a personal tragedy that may have affected them. There might be extenuating circumstances there, but Bro Crocos have performed. This is their worst performance of the season. So is it just a once-off bad performance versus a once-off good performance from Astronic, or is there a trend here? And I think it'll be a lot clearer in 2 weeks' time at the end of Open 5.
I hear you, but I see Astronic making this not a fluke. Like, they beat him in Game 5 and they beat him in Game 7. That's fair, but it ain't just once. It is twice. It's on different days. It's with different stakes. It's on Championship Sunday. It's the difference as well as getting Inspire in the region. Like, I see this Astronic team having caliber of like third place. And I think they illustrated that against Deathcloud too. Like 4-2, that's a close series as well. To me, it's a toss-up between those three. I totally respect the other opinion on it, but like for Astronic to do that twice, that sells it for me.
Do we have any information on why Lewis P wasn't playing in region? Does anybody have information?
He tweeted about it quite a bit.
Did he?
I don't know if anyone wants to expand on it. Oh, what's up?
No, I didn't even know that. I missed those tweets. That's poor of me. Yeah.
He basically said he wasn't happy. I got to look it up so that I don't talk out of my butt right now, but he wasn't really happy with the setup as it was. I think he was still experiencing difficulties with the equipment he had. Like, from what I remember, he had a laptop instead of like a full like rig to work off of. And I just heard he was more comfortable at home.
Okay.
Make of that what you will.
Well, Devour saying in chat, KCP don't have money, but I don't know if that's Devour just being Devour or if there's...
Well,
there's...
if you really want to read Twitch chat and report on it like that, you can.
Oh, no, okay. Now he's added a question mark. So it was actually a question, not a statement. Okay. That makes a lot more sense. But that's got to have had an effect on how they played.
I certainly think so.
Yeah, I mean, you can also make the argument for the comfortability thing. I mean, the one regional that Pioneers won is the one that he was playing from home and not within region. So I guess I can kind of see the vision there, or at least the thought process for what they were going for. But I mean, I didn't really jump in there for the Astronic conversation, but Astronic's the only other teams besides Five Fears to have beaten the Pioneers. And that's off of Inspire coming into the region. And I mean, Renshiro making his first top 8 here in SSA. I feel like at this point there's more evidence for being in region than there is against.
Mm. And then my thoughts on synthesis are that synthesis for me are pretty much they've only missed one top 8. They're like a guaranteed top 8 team and a sometimes top 6 team, but they haven't figured out themselves to break through that. They've come close a couple of times. They may even have had one or two good results, but and we've gone on about their inconsistency, but I think consistency wise they can make a top 8 and maybe a top 6. That's kind of their ceiling right now.
Here's your tweet, by the way. This is on February 1st. He says, I didn't get my baggage with my PC, got sick for a week, had to play on a laptop, and lost both regionals. Cool.
Wow.
And he gave a shout out to Air France as well for all that.
Oh, Jesus.
But yeah, it just sounds like a pretty miserable experience for him due to the logistics of the trip and then the result of the equipment he had to use, and maybe just didn't want to have to go through all that again.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. I can understand that. And look, it's I think a lot of people overlook the discomfort of not being at home. Leaving home it's a hell of a thing. Everything you know and understand and are used to is changed. And South Africa can be a culture shock. So there you go. All right. So then moving on to Sunday. And Sunday was kind of weird because 5 best of 7 series, which means there was a potential 35 games. That was the maximum number of games that could have been played on Sunday, but 21 were played. Is that right? 16 and 7? Yeah, 23. 23 out of 35 games played because we had one banger series and then sweeps the rest of the way. And let's talk about that banger series. I don't know how much of it you saw, Borky, with your phone in the air trying to get a signal, and how much you saw on VOD, but your take on what you did catch of that series.
Man, that series was phenomenal. That's the exact one where I was struggling loading that game at the lowest 144p, and then it would freeze, come back like a minute later, there'd be a goal scored, and next thing I know, we're in overtime on Utopia Coliseum. It was, I mean, that was truly a phenomenal series in my opinion, and I think that can really come back to that conversation. Yeah, it was the best showing, or wasn't the best showing for the Bro Crows, but Astronic, they looked very scary at a lot of those moments.
Yeah, without a doubt, the highlight of the day. And yeah, shout out to Astronic, looking really good. I was going to message Devour after that series, before they played the 5 Fears, just to say, hey, listen, you could go out and do something really, really funny. But I thought there was enough pressure going on. I didn't want to put more on. But it does start bringing us to the subject of, well, let's talk first Death Cloud Esports. They were swept by Pioneers, and Death Cloud are looking like a really good roster, but Pioneers made work of them, got their job done. And Pyro, I don't know. I thought, well, maybe they're back. Maybe they're back in position to do what they got to do in the grand final.
I guess a note about Death Cloud. So for Am and Nitro, is this their second or their third top 4 in a row?
Well, if we go with Amapiano, they've been top 4 since Open 2. So they're third.
So they're third in a row?
Yeah.
I mean, that illustrates the consistency that we've hammed up so much from the Bro Crows side, that they just missed out on through this event. So you could put them on the same benchmark, in my opinion. And that's why I like the Death Cloud conversation in the top 3, to be compared with Bro Crows and Astronic. Now, did their result against the Pioneers help their case? Clearly not. I mean, they averaged a goal per game against the Pioneers, so I think there's unfortunately still some top heaviness to this region. Pioneers and Five Fears just continue to showcase that with whoever they play, albeit Pioneers having that misstep in GSL. So we still need to see more, unfortunately. But yeah, it was another one of those results where why are we seeing all these sweeps? It felt so unexpected.
All right. Well, it does bring us to the Five Fears conversation because early signs drop. Going game 5 against Strive. They dropped a game against Marine Region, and it was like, oh, maybe they are a little bit vulnerable. Maybe there is a little chink in the armor. Somebody can stick something in there and start to pry it apart. But from the moment,
I gotta quote you here, Graybeard. I gotta interrupt because I remember you talking about it when you saw that loss against Marine Region, and then Five Fears won it anyway. You were like, "Yeah, you gotta understand Five Fears. They may have a slow, easy start at the beginning of their match. They'll clean it up. They'll close it out." So you can say maybe some people had their doubts. I don't think you did, and I definitely did casting their team stream. So
it is a frustration with them if you are facing them, or if you're a fan of whoever they're playing, because they are probably more adept than any other team of sorting themselves out mid-series. They can go down 2 games, figure something out, change it up, and bring it round after having a 2-game loss, and they will go on and win. And that's honestly a massive superpower of theirs is you never feel, even if you think you're doing well, no, you're not. It's just early days. But then we saw it. They did not drop a game in the top 8. They cleared through Synthesis. They cleared through Astronic. And then most surprising of all, they cleared through the Pioneers. And yeah, I think just based on what we're seeing, we made a joke on the broadcast is whenever you use the word undisputedly or inarguably, there's always room for an argument. But now there isn't. Five Fears are the number 1 team, out and out, no question. Move on. And I think Pioneers can absolutely claim, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the 2nd team in the region.
Yeah, and it's exactly as you said earlier. This Open was very reminiscent on how the earlier seasons felt, where we kind of had who was the predetermined top dogs and everyone else was a battle for 2nd place. It feels here it's a bit different because we do have that 2nd place team already decided. But it wasn't the final I was expecting. And when I looked in through Wikipedia, I messaged you first thing Sunday, said, I'm finally home. I can't wait to watch this VOD. It looks like it was a close one. And then as the game played out, I realized it just felt like a battle of Five Fears would start doing their thing. They let off the gas a little bit. Pioneers would catch up, and then they'd just pick up right where they left off. And I mentioned briefly how it was the gun show. He scored 8 out of the 12 goals that Five Fears did in the finals.
So let's take a moment then to have a chat about from our very I don't know if I would call our opinions expert on this topic. But where to from here for Pioneers? I didn't see the tweets from Lewis, but reading those, and given the current state of things, it feels to me like I don't know if there's an insurmountable mental vibes chasm to overcome Pyro. How do they fix this? Is it fixable? Because the equation is at least very simple. They have to win the next 2 regionals to make major and to make worlds. If they lose Open 5, their season's done. They're cooked, and Five Fears will represent us in Paris and at Worlds.
The Pioneers won't see this as insurmountable, and nor do I, because there's a few things going for them. I think number 1 is the mentality of players like to die for. We heard them in an interview. He remarked on his loss towards Ashanik. He's like, listen, that kind of thing happens. We're going to get up and we're going to push forward. And then they nearly swept through their next 3 series and they're meeting to 5 fears. The second one is to say that like teams will have these kind of events. Like if you look at MENA, Falcons and Twisted Minds, neither of them made the grand finals in open number 4. Like it was shocking. And it was like, I'm sorry, shouldn't they be a shoe-in? Well, events like this happen. And for Pioneers, you can look at that matchup against 5 Fears and say, well, these things happen. And the third thing is I'm guessing they have an idea of what's going wrong, because every time I see either the players or the coach tweet about, the results, about what happened, they always say like, oh, we had it, we just didn't close. We got to learn how to close. Okay, we got to learn how to continue and close on the opportunity that we have. Clearly, they're honing in on one element of their gameplay that they can't quite do. So if they have the VOD review, if they have the instructions, if they know what has to be done, figure out the way to coach the team and get them on the right track to do it. I don't know if when they talk about closing, right? I don't know if it's like a mentality thing. Like, is the team like locked in for the whole series to close it? Are they not responding to something 5 Fears are doing? Because we discussed so much about how they adapt really, really well mid-series. Whatever it is, I don't see it as something that's insurmountable for them, but they've got their work to do.
Well, I think now I would like to go and have a look at who the top performers were of open number 4, because there are a couple of surprises in there, I think. So there is a fabulous new resource for those who don't know about it. Exclamation stats in chat will give you the link to this website, which are all of the stats from every game of main event RLCS in SSA from the very beginning. And one of the things the site has is you can go to an event, in this case, open number 4, and you can see who all the top performers were. So going through the top stats here, and we start to see why there's been so much conversation around guns. Now, there is a player rating, and this is a bit of a formula taken between goals, saves, assists, how many times you were demoed, how many demos you did. So there's a bit of a formula that calculates your overall rating. And guns for open number 4 is at 8.15, which is almost 2 full points ahead of the next, which is Tekos. And 3 above third at 5. So, I mean, he did amazingly there. Now, the thing that jumps out at me immediately, which is Jerome. Jerome is amongst his second for goal average and third overall player rating. And they didn't even make it through GSL. So that's interesting. is all I want to say about that. But the last point I want to make, and then I want to hand it over to Pyro and Borky for any thoughts they have. But if we look at where Sweaty is. Sweaty is number 9 in terms of rating, and then in every other significant stat, Sweaty does not appear in the top 10. Pyro, Borky, anyone? Pick your jaws up off the floor.
Sorry, I had to I had to take a moment there to like process that, because it was, the conversation has been, or at least last season, that Sweaty is one, if not the best player within the region, and for him to not even be making it into the top 10 for more than one of these categories, it's honestly a bit alarming in my opinion. I feel like, yeah, you could have an off split here and there, but somebody that has been regarded in such high praise, I think I would expect a little bit more, especially when you are trying to compete for that major and world spot.
And then the other point of significance, and you can And in chat, and either of you two, if there's a stat you want to see, we can call up any stat and we can see who the top performers were there. But not just Zany, neither is Lewis P featuring in any of the big stats, the headline stats, player rating, for example. Whereas Five Fears, I mean, that roster appears. They appear somewhere in every single stat. They're all up there. And shout out to Astronic though, because top executioners devour, inspire, and skill still. And Pyro, we definitely saw that, right? I mean, they are loving the demo meta.
We talked about it at length. The fact that they're extremely efficient when it comes to making those demos happen. And it's great because every team has their own style. And for Astronic, this is something that is absolutely working for them. So there's no reason for them to stop. I hope they continue to formulate a great attack around that strategy. Yeah, Lewis P is around on those demos. And then, yeah, Five Fears have, aside from Jerome, they are topping the charts in terms of score. Guns has a ridiculous amount of goals per game compared to everybody else. It's sort of like stats don't tell the whole story because you got to insert context within stats. And you got to think about the fact that like 5 years is just obliterating some teams. But you can also compare that against 5 years and their matchup against Pioneers. And Guns really did score like a madman. He had over a 50% shooting percentage in the grand finals. You never see that. You just don't see that because you're supposed to be going up against the best defense in your region or one of the best defenses. And that just was not there for the Pioneers. They could not stop Guns. So, yeah, it's a lot of kudos to Guns. That is true.
Well, if we look at the not averages, but just the volume of goals, and some of this is by virtue of having played more games, but it gives a slightly different picture there with Five Fears and Pioneers. Those two rosters are the top 6 in the sheer number, but there's Guns at 34, To Die For just behind at 30, and what's really unfortunate with the combination of the Five Fears performance and the Pioneers performance is the fact that it's completely overshadowed the fact that To Die For became the first SSA player to score 1,000 RLCS goals, which he scored in the grand final against Five Fears. But if you're going to open a bottle of champagne, it's a really small one. I mean, if they had gone on to win, this would have been a huge event as well.
Oh, it would have been. It absolutely would have been. I think it's a hallmark moment still for To Die For because it brings that context of his longevity at the top. We think of To Die For as one of the first players ever kind of picked up by Snowy that was like, of course, To Die For is the one joining this team, the best team in the region to take SSA to a new level. And he's been doing it ever since for years now. And yeah, it's shown off in that way of goals. If anybody wants to comment on To Die For, go ahead. I just have one other, since we're on the topic of stats.
Yes.
I had some really interesting stats going into that finals between Five Fears and Pioneers. Yes. And it was against all their 3 matchups before that Open 4, all the grand finals. Five Fears had taken considerably more shots than the Pioneers, 169 versus 116. However, they scored less goals, only 27 to the Pioneers 35. So that means that like Pioneers are used to 5 years putting a ridiculous amount of shots on, but their defense shows up. The Pioneers put up a 30% shooting percentage, whereas the 5 years put up nearly a 15% shooting percentage. What I think is an takeaway out of those statistics is that 5 years had no problem scoring in that series. Something with the defense of the Pioneers changed to make them way less effective. I'd have to dive in and watch the match back to see exactly why that is, but it didn't operate the way that it had been the last 3 matchups they've had.
Yeah, well,
I
I've just
think
got
part of
the
it.
go
Sorry,
Borky.
they're graybeard. I was just gonna say, I think part of it is if we kind of look back at some of those other stats, and I mean, I coming in a little more fresh of watching that final, is it felt like at times the 5 years was a lot more physical, and they were a lot more disrupting of the rotations of Pioneers. There's a couple plays that I can recall where that third man, or at least this whoever was rotating back in to be the third man, it was either Tekos or I believe Snowy just getting in the way, bumping them or demoing them.
Mm.
And I believe it was even you on the call, Pyro. You said this isn't the first time we've seen the Pioneers net left wide open.
Mm-hmm. I do remember saying that.
And there we
I don't know
see
if that showcases like desperation from them, right? Because they're like desperate to just score goals and there's no one left back. Or the 5 years being so jumpy, cutting that rotation and scoring on them. But yeah, that's a great point to make.
and there you see confirmation, and this is just in open 5 fears putting on over 11 shots to Pioneers 9. So yeah, definitely being outshot there. All right, cool. Well, I think that kind of wraps things up then in terms of breaking down the weekend. And the equation is very simple. I mean, the season started with Pioneers taking the early lead. If you think about a marathon at the starting gun, Pioneers came out the gate, and for the first few miles they were in the lead, and then in opens 2 and 3, 5 fears started to draw level, pulled ahead, and it feels like their sprint, Pyro, is starting early. Like they've now got very clear daylight between themselves and Pioneers.
I hope there's the idea of like a sprint being worth it for these teams that are competing right now, both in the sense of 5 years to continue to not set their benchmark at being number one in the region, but going back to the international major, doing some damage, right? I think that is top of mind for them after clearing their way through the Pioneers and having Boston Major in their mind, what they can improve on. For other teams, though, look at the Astronic result. Look at Pioneers looking a little bit battered and ready to be, potentially defeated in other matchups. I want to see Deathcloud, Astronic, and Brokrokos grinding, not to be number 3, but to be a next 2, to be a reason that, we expect maybe another upset here. That was the most unexpected result out of this weekend, that Astronic win against Pioneers, and I hope it serves as motivation for teams to say there's more in front of us that we can do.
And it does raise an uncomfortable question, and one I've raised from time to time. And I don't even know how to have the conversation because I don't know what resolves it other than us continuing to improve inside the region. And the 2/3 rule is there's no question that that's helping us. And I did see Renshiro. There was a fairly lively chat. It might have been during last week's podcast or maybe during the watch party, somewhere along the line, about the comparison of APAC and SSA. And Renshiro made the comment, which I really liked, that in his opinion, SSA has a lot more depth, has more depth than APAC has. Like we have more building from the bottom, and I'm going to take him at his word because I don't know enough about APAC to contradict or confirm either way. But we have a team, and it was Orlando Pirates back in the day, and then Limitless, and now 5 Fears. Is the SSA, whoever goes to a major, they're dominating inside the region, but can't win a game in an international setting. And that's the gap I would love to see close. And I don't know how that happens because we're now in our 5th season, and you go, at some point, we've got to start winning at least a series here and there, and occasion. I don't know, Pyro, and it is an uncomfortable question because we don't want to. I don't know. I don't know, Pyro.
No, you're just illustrating like a very reasonable frustration, which is like, we are improving. You're right. We're doing better. But then every time it's the major, it gets so tough. I always think about the fact that like we have not defined the ceiling of Rocket League yet. And that does work against SSA because the region's improving, but guess what? Everybody else is improving too. We have to somehow accelerate the rate of improvement to be better than the rate of improvement of the rest of the world. And that's something that's very difficult to do. But I think the fact that 2/3 happened, the fact that there's a little bit of spice in the top 2 of the region, it gives us our best chance to close that gap.
Well, if 5 Fears continue to dominate as they have been and they go to the major, I will be there. I'm very excited about going. I'll be live in Paris, and I would love to see the breakthrough in that regard, if it is to happen. Moving on, because open number 4 is done, and there are no breaks. Sign-ups for open number 5 closed at 5 o'clock today. So what was that, 3 hours ago? Qualifiers are this weekend. All of the top 8 don't have to scrap in the double elimination bracket on Saturday, but they will have to compete in Swiss with the other 26. Is it 20? How many teams come out of Swiss, out of double elim? What's 32 minus 8? 24. 24 teams to join the existing top 8 in Swiss on Sunday. And we had 113 signups for open number 4. That has dropped to 85 for open number 2, which is pretty kind of par for the course. The first regionals of a split always seem to have higher signups, and then they taper off a little bit, but not bad. Not a bad number of signups. 85 teams signed up. Hopefully, most of those will complete and make it through verification to play on the weekend. And I think, that's where we are now. I don't know what other big Rocket League things are going on. I mean, RLCS is so loud, Borky, that when RLCS is on, it's hard to find conversation about anything else. And while you're talking, I don't know if Pyro's video just disappeared and if he's still there audioly. You are still here.
I am. Yeah.
Okay, Pyro's still here. So anything else we should be talking about, Borky?
There's one thing that kind of goes back to closing the gap and stuff like that. Is one of the things that I see SSA does very well in comparison to some other regions, and I mean EU being the exception, is the grassroots level kind of activities that go on within the scene, and that's why there's so much depth. So I'm curious to hear. I mean, we know obviously once RSC picks up, that's going to be the vocal point. But I'm curious about, like, how is Six Man's doing within SSA? How is the Rising Star Academy doing in SSA? I mean, these are people that are constantly making waves within the scene and trying to improve as much as possible and make sure that there is that space and room for competition. So I think, I guess my question is, I need to do a little more research and delve into what is making the region go on, because it isn't only just RLCS. That's just what we see at the surface level.
You do highlight two things, and it does remind me that we need to get Rising Star Academy and Six Man's onto the podcast, and that's been something floating around which hasn't been nailed down. So I think we got to do that sooner rather than later. Six Man's is being rebuilt. We're still pretty fractured in the region in terms of, the top 8, top 12 teams tend to segregate themselves and play amongst themselves. Which is something that was pioneered by and engineered by and still run by Snowy, which is segregated from the rest of Six Man's. But in a way, that is what it is, and we're not going to have the argument around that. There are 3 admins, 3 people who've taken over the Six Man's, and they are quite committed to remaking the Six Mans into something that becomes of value and service to the community. And that's KV, Olam, and Lorax, who are who do want to make, I beg your pardon, KV, Olam, and Pine are running the server, and they've been getting assistance and consultations on ideas and things that they can do, and there have been an influx of newer players, and I think where Six Mans is going to be built is almost from the bottom, like your rank. I don't know how low the ranks go in Six Mans, but build it from the bottom there, and feed people in. And I do know they've had an influx of new players into it, so we're quite encouraged there. And then Kirika, they do magnificent work, and they've also had an influx of people into the Rising Star Academy. So I feel like those roots are what's the word? Well, when they take root, and then something can grow from it. So I would like to help them as much as I can, and to have the community help them as much as they can, so that they can play leading roles in that. But great question, and great points, Borky. But those two things are very important to the long-term success. Pyro, anything else we've missed out on? I saw your mouth moving, but I heard nothing. I don't know if you're muted or not. It's not just me, Borky. Oh, okay.
Yeah. First
All
the
right.
camera, now the mic.
Yeah, well, listen, I feel his pain. I've been there a lot.
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%.
My goodness gracious. All right, well, hopefully, because I'd like to hear his closing thoughts. So, Achilles in chat, Pyro, is saying that you didn't even announce this. Announce what? What did Pyro not announce?
Testing.
Ah, Pyro's back.
Oh,
What didn't you announce, Pyro? Oh, you disappeared again. You were just here.
Probably the fact that we're live now.
Oh, okay.
You can't hear me?
No, now I can.
Can you? Hello?
Yeah, you're good. You're here.
Okay. Yeah, aside from that, I did have a final comment, because you're asking about general Rocket League things, right? Outside of RLCS. I think it's probably worth speaking about the announcement that came out 3 hours ago, I want to say, which is the fact that Epic Games has laid off over 1,000 employees.
Oh, Jesus, I didn't even see that. Oh my God, that is terrible.
In their blog post, they posted about like kind of what this means and why, and how it doesn't have anything to do with AI. It is like just market conditions and the fact that they are spending way more than they're making right now at Epic Games. They talk quite a bit about Fortnite, mention absolutely nothing about Rocket League. But what we do know is that community manager and developer Devin Connors was laid off, as he made a personal post about it.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh,
and
Jesus.
So there's likely more than just him related to Rocket League.
Your mic's disappeared again, Pyro.
That have been laid. What? I heard you say my name. What?
Okay, no, we didn't hear you again.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll just stop there, because I don't know how much you're going to hear of me, but it's just the fact that the layoffs happened.
Well, that kind of undermines my immensely positive statement earlier about, the trajectory's all good and maybe we get 3 splits next season. Now I'm not so sure. Devin Connors, who's I think he's been there from the beginning. That is wild. But at least now he's not going to get angry tags from the Rocket League community demanding they do things that's not his job. That is... well,
I see they also shut down Rocket Racing officially.
Oh, Jesus. That is wild.
Darn.
It looks like some big things are happening at Epic.
I don't know what that means now. I need someone to tell me what to think about this. Renshiro, it's never going to happen.
Well, I was elaborating on that, but apparently my mic isn't working too well.
No,
so I'll just
yeah, it's working great. While it's working, carry on elaborating.
Well, it's hard to make sense of it because all we know is that Devin posted he's being laid off. We don't know how much of the team is being laid off. Like it could be minor, it could be major. So unfortunately, there's no way to make sense of it until we hear more.
Oh man, that makes me. I mean, because Devin Connors, I mean, he's a legend. He's been around so damn long. It's like, anyway, okay. That is what it is, and that is news and news worth paying attention to, and we'll see how that rolls out over the coming weeks and see how that impacts Rocket League. I mean, there is also how does that impact Rocket League being folded into Fortnite, which has been rumored for years. And the current rumor is, come the end of this RLCS season, that's when it's going to happen. But I don't know. We just keep going and hope the bots get sorted out, and we play it one regional at a time. And we keep going with the confidence that come the next year, the next season, the next whatever, there will be high-level competitive Rocket League to play. And we will continue in that vein, gentlemen. But Pyro and Borky, thanks for coming to hang, talking about Open number 4. Open 5 just around the corner. I will be watch partying on Saturday and Sunday with all the team streams going on, all the chaos and fun leading to the main event starting, the weekend after that. But